You know, I was editing the Greenland video and a thought had occurred to me. We haven't touched Oceania yet, so I thought, let's change that. To my US viewers, have you ever been scrolling around looking for your state on a legal document online and come across Palau and think, what's that? That would have been me in high school. So, Palau. Officially the Republic of Palau, this is situated right off the brink of Asia, a little bit off to the east of the Philippines. And while it is an independent country as of 1981, in 1982 it signed a compact of free association with the United States. So what exactly does this mean? Basically, they use the US dollar, and they can travel to and from the United States and even live there without a passport, while still being its own country. We're not going to get into that any further because today's video will focus on the island of Babeldaob. This is the largest of Palau's 340 plus islands, making up much of its land and holds about 10 of the nation's 16 states. We are probably not going to touch all 10 of those states in this video, however, many of them will be explored. For the most part, I'll be touching on certain sites within some of them. Also, we'll see this as a bit of an experiment, as this is my first video that does not center around a list of any kind. So bear with me. Now, other than its size, something that distinguishes Babeldaob from the other islands is that it's very mountainous. Therefore, the nation's highest point can be found here, Mount Churchilsis. This is situated between the two states of Jardmau and Jaramlingui. Basically, this is due to millions of years of volcanic activity, which owes itself to the Pacific Plate slipping underneath the Philippine Plate. The end result would be a bunch of ridges that now makes up this mountainous island, as well as the rest of Palau. Yet, there's no shortage of sandy beaches here, specifically on the eastern coast. On the west coast, however, lies all sorts of mangrove forests, which is not uncommon for islands. Remember the Haiti video? Now, Palau has been seized and sold by many different empires through its time, but the first European sighting of Babeldaob goes back to 1543 by the Spanish. This was because of the failed Ruy López de Villalobos expedition to colonize the Philippines, but don't worry, they would be back. In 1710, the islands would be revisited by the Spanish and were then integrated into the Spanish East Indies with the Philippines and the rest of the modern-day nation up until 1899. 1899 would see the island sold to the Germans, which is probably also a good time to jump into the native population. So the Soques tribe did not actually originate on this island, but many of that tribe would end up here by the 20th century. Originally, they resided on an island known as Panpay, but were banished to Babeldaob after an uprising against the new German colonizers. This is known as the Soques Rebellion. I highly recommend reading deeper into that. Before too long, the Japanese would come in and annex this into their empire, which would then go to the US after World War II. And while this is greatly oversimplified, I'd like to try and stay on topic. So, considering all of the native and colonial history on the island, it's no surprise that there is a whole bunch of different cultural roots to be found. For one, the capital of the entire nation is located on this island, known as Nurulmud, but it's far from the largest city. In fact, it is greatly eclipsed by the far larger Koror, which has a population of around 11,000, or half of the entire country's population. For comparison, the island we're discussing today only has about 4,000 people total, despite its size, and the actual capital itself doesn't really have anybody living it, making it the least populated capital in the world. Said capital is in the state of Melekeok, which is also home to the largest freshwater lake in not only Palau, but all of the Micronesian region, Lake Narok. At about 5 square kilometers, it's protected by a nature reserve and hosts all sorts of biodiversity, as well as providing fresh water for the local residents. Several endangered species reside here, including the Palau gray duck, the Micronesian pigeon, the Mariana fruit bat, and saltwater crocodiles. Returning to the capital, you will notice that the seat of government building is designed to reflect that of the U.S. Capitol building, which was finished in 2006 when this town became the capital itself. Planning for this capital could actually date all the way back to 1986, shortly after gaining sovereignty. However, construction of this building wouldn't commence until Taiwan granted a $20 million loan in exchange for recognition over the People's Republic of China. Going down the coast, you will find the Njesar Dock, a long and thin strip that goes out to the ocean, providing some pretty spectacular views. Now, despite how sparsely this island is populated, its roads are actually pretty nice and maintained, and there isn't a lot of traffic, so it's actually very easy to get around by car. Thus, there is a bridge that connects it, simply known as the Koror Babeldaob Bridge. Being built in 1977, it's a pre-stressed concrete box girder, which grew a noticeable sag over time. I know, scary. So in 1996, a project was called to correct this issue, but then it collapsed shortly thereafter. Don't worry, it has since been fixed. Reconstruction was finished by 2002, and now it also goes by the name Palau and Japan Friendship Bridge because Japan gave a lot of aid towards this project. The state that this runs from is one of the larger ones, and the second most populous one, known as Arai. It's got the Palau National Airport, the U.S. Embassy, and of course some of the nation's most important roads. The Arai Bai, a bai being a traditional men's meeting house, can be found here, which is over 100 years old. It's built on a stone platform being made out of wood and thatch. Babeldaob's most important World War II site is also found here, that being the Kai Gun Show. It's a shelled out building from being bombed, once being a communications building for the Japanese. You can actually still find a bunch of guns and tanks from that time situated right next to it. Now heading up to the center of the island is the state of Ngat Pang, sits a waterfall named after the state, being the Ngat Pang Tabachiting Waterfall. It's supposed to be a bit of a difficult hike, but getting there is apparently very worth it, and you can even jump in for a dip. Now the Ngat Pang state is split similarly to how Michigan is in the U.S., with a body of water separating it known as the Karamadu Bay. In the same state is another really neat looking waterfall known as the Nard Mao, found near the northern part of the island. This is also the highest one in the entire Micronesian region, flowing from the aforementioned highest point. Now there's actually a bit of a legend to this one. It goes something to the tune of being created by a one-eyed eel that supposedly fell asleep so deep that it never woke up. Don't ask me why. The drop is roughly 20 meters, and like in the other one, you can swim in it underneath after the hike that it takes to get there. And lush vegetation can be found all around it. Going even further up north is the village of Nebukted, which is full of cultural history for the Palauan people in the state of Ngagrard. Stone paths, graves, relics, the Bai Era Ngarau, and more can be found up here, making it a pretty important point for the nation. The Bai was actually designed by many people of the community, built entirely out of local materials, working as a bit of a monument. There are many stories attached to this, ranging anywhere from old native figures up to World War II. I really don't have time to cover all that as I want to make this a bit of a brief video. But as always, there's a link to the source in the description. Now at the very tippy top of Babeldaob hosts the tiny state known as Garchalong, where you can find the Bajorchao stone monoliths. They're one of the largest archaeological sites in the entire nation and potentially the oldest as well. Essentially, it's 52 basalt megaliths lined up in 2 rows. There are faces carved into some of them, and it's estimated to date back to the 2nd century. We've talked about the Bai several times now, and it's said that these might be ancient pillars for a very old one that no longer exists. In fact, the legend goes that it was constructed by the gods, meant to hold 1,000 people. If it did actually fit that many people, then it would have been the largest one. And you better believe that the surrounding ocean view is incredible. Anywho, we're gonna wrap it up for this video, as I wanted to keep this one brief. Obviously, I didn't get into every state like I said I wouldn't, but this should paint a pretty nice picture of Babeldaob for you. It was kind of nice doing a video that wasn't structured around any kind of list, so please let me know how you felt about this. Was it better? Was it worse? Does it not make a difference? Until next time, and as they say in Palauan, Ak Moralang.